Her name was Maya, and for the first 20 years of her life, she believed she was alone in this world. No mother, no father, no family, just a name written on a piece of paper, and a small iron bed in the corner of a room she shared with 11 other girls. She did not know, as she lay on that bed night after night, that somewhere across the ocean, in a city called Atlanta, in a house with warm lights and a garden and a mother who tucked her in every single night, there was a girl who looked exactly like her. Same face, same eyes, same small scar behind the left ear. A girl who had everything Maya never had. A girl Maya never knew existed. And the woman who knew the truth about both of them had spent 20 years making sure they never found each other. This is their story. The earliest memory Maya had was of a door. A big brown wooden door at the front of the orphanage where she grew up. She must have been about 4 or 5 years old. She remembered standing near it every Saturday morning, because Saturday was the day families came. They would walk in, couples mostly, sometimes with older children already in tow, and Sister Mary, the woman who ran the home, would line the children up in the main hall. Clean dresses, combed hair, hands folded in front of them, and they would stand there, all of them, quietly hoping. Maya remembered watching the couples move slowly down the line, the way their eyes would travel from one child to the next, pausing, considering, then moving on. Some children got picked quickly, a toddler with a round face and big eyes, a quiet little boy who smiled at everyone, a set of siblings who held hands so tightly the couple said they could not bear to separate them. Maya was never picked. Week after week, month after month, year after year, she started to wonder what was wrong with her. She would stand in front of the small cracked mirror in the bathroom and study her own face, searching for whatever it was that made people look at her and keep walking. Sister Mary noticed. She was a tall woman, thin, with a voice that was both strict and soft at the same time. One evening she found Maya sitting alone by the window after the families had all gone home. She sat beside her quietly for a while. Then she said, "You are not forgotten, Maya. The family that is meant for you is not late. It is just not yet." Maya nodded, but she did not fully believe her. What she did not know then was that the reason no one had come for her had nothing to do with her face, or her smile, or anything about her at all. It had everything to do with a secret that began on the night she was born. Her mother's name was Eliana. She was 23 years old when she found out she was pregnant. She was not married. The man who was supposed to stand by her disappeared the moment she told him the news. She was living in a single room in a compound in Suralire, Lagos, surviving on the little money she made selling fabric at a market stall. But she was not bitter. Everyone who knew her said the same thing. Eliana was gentle. Eliana was full of light. Even in difficulty she smiled. When she went into labor, she was taken to a government hospital by her neighbor, an older woman named Mama Beezy, because she had no one else. The doctors told her she was carrying twins. She was shocked. She had no money for one child, let alone two. But when they placed both babies in her arms, two tiny girls, identical, breathing softly, she looked at them and wept. Not from sadness. From something she could not name. Something that felt like her whole heart had just doubled in size. She named them both that night. The first she called was Maya. The second she called Chloe. She held them both for as long as she was allowed. But the joy did not last long. There was a woman in the hospital that same night. A Nigerian woman, well-dressed, with an American accent and a quiet kind of authority that made nurses step aside when she walked down a corridor. Her name was Mrs. Felicia Coker. She had come to Lagos from Atlanta to visit family. And she had come to that particular hospital because she had suffered her third miscarriage just 4 months earlier, and her doctor had referred her to a specialist there. Mrs. Coker had money. She had a beautiful home in Atlanta. She had a husband who loved her. She had everything except the one thing she wanted more than anything else in the world. A child. She was walking past the maternity ward when she heard the sound of 2 babies crying. She stopped. She looked through the glass. And she saw Eliana, young, exhausted, barely able to sit up, holding 2 identical newborns. Something moved in Mrs. Coker that night that she would spend 20 years trying to justify. She asked a nurse about the mother. The nurse, without thinking, told her too much, that the woman was alone, that she was poor, that she had no husband, no family support, and no money for the hospital bills. Mrs. Coker went back to her hotel room and did not sleep. The next morning she returned to the hospital. She went to Eliana's room. She sat beside her. And she spoke to her softly, carefully. The way you speak to someone you already know is exhausted and afraid. She told Eliana that she could see she loved her babies. She told her she was not there to judge. But she said, and these were her exact words, words that Eliana would write down later in a letter, she said, "You cannot give both of them what they deserve. But I can take one of them to America and give her a life you could never give her here. A good school, a safe home, everything, and you keep the other. You will both know your child is alive and loved. Isn't that better than watching them both suffer?" Eliana said no. Then she looked at her hospital bill. Then she looked at her empty purse. Then she looked at her 2 daughters sleeping beside each other. And she said no again. Mrs. Coker left. But she came back the next day. And the day after that. On the 4th day, something in Eliana broke. She was running a fever. The hospital was threatening to discharge her without completing her treatment if the bill was not settled. She had called everyone she knew, and no one could help. She had not eaten since the morning before. She held both her daughters, and she wept for a long time. Then she called for Mrs. Coker. She agreed. But she made one condition. She asked Mrs. Coker to swear, on whatever she believed in, that her daughter would know where she came from. That when she was old enough, she would be told the truth about her twin sister. About her mother. About everything. Mrs. Coker swore. She lied. She took Chloe, the second twin, the one Eliana had named, wrapped her carefully, paid the full hospital bill, and left Lagos within 48 hours. Eliana kept Maya. But the sickness that had started in that hospital did not leave her. It grew. Slowly at first, then quickly. Within 8 months she was too ill to care for Maya, too weak to work, too alone to fight. She brought Maya to Sister Mary's orphanage on a Tuesday afternoon. She was so thin by then that Sister Mary almost did not recognize her as the young woman she had met briefly at a church bazaar the year before. Eliana handed Maya over. She asked Sister Mary to keep her safe. Then she pressed a sealed envelope into Sister Mary's hands and said, "Give this to her when she is old enough to understand. Please. Promise me." Sister Mary promised. Eliana walked out of the orphanage and never came back. She died 11 weeks later. Maya did not know any of this as a child. She grew up knowing nothing, not her mother's name, not her father's name, not that somewhere in the world there was a girl who shared her face, her blood, and the name her mother had given her on the night they were both born. She grew up knowing only the orphanage, the brown wooden door, the Saturday mornings, and Sister Mary's voice telling her to be patient. So she was patient, and she worked. If there was one thing Maya had, it was hunger. Not just the kind that growls in your stomach at night when dinner is not enough, though she knew that kind too. The hunger to become something, to be someone, to prove that the life you were handed at birth is not the life you are required to keep. She threw herself into school the way other children threw themselves into play. While the other girls at the orphanage spent their free hours watching television or braiding each other's hair, Maya was at the small wooden table in the corner of the study room with whatever textbooks she could find, reading things she was not yet supposed to understand, asking Sister Mary questions she sometimes could not answer. Sister Mary started calling her professor. The other children laughed. Maya did not mind. By the time she was 16, she was the best student at her secondary school. Not just in her class, in the entire school. Her teachers would sometimes bring visitors from other schools to watch her solve equations on the board, as if she were a demonstration of something. Maya did not think she was special. She just had nowhere else to put her energy. No family to visit on weekends. No aunties cooking big pots of food for her on Sundays. No one is calling her name from outside the gate. The studying was hers. It was the one place in the world where she was not waiting for someone to choose her. She was choosing herself. At 17, Maya won her first state scholarship. At 18, she placed in the top 10 in a national science competition. At 19, she applied, without telling anyone, for an international medical scholarship offered by a university in Atlanta, Georgia. The application required 3 essays, 2 teacher recommendations, a medical aptitude test, and an interview conducted over video call with a panel of professors. She did not sleep for 3 weeks preparing. When Sister Mary found out she had applied, she did not scold her for keeping it secret. She sat down, looked at Maya carefully, and said, "You are going to get it." Maya told her she could not know that. Sister Mary said, "I know you." 4 months later the email arrived. She had got it. Full scholarship. Medical school. Atlanta, Georgia. The entire orphanage found out within an hour. The younger children ran around the compound screaming. The older girls hugged Maya so tightly she could not breathe. Sister Mary stood in the doorway of her office and wiped her eyes with the edge of her blouse, trying to pretend she was not crying. That evening she called Maya into her office alone. She opened the bottom drawer of her desk, a drawer Maya had never seen her open in all her years there, and she took out an envelope. Old, yellowed slightly at the edges, still sealed. Maya's name was written on the front in handwriting she did not recognize. "Maya, your mother left this for you," Sister Mary said. "She asked me to give it to you when you were old enough. I've been waiting for the right moment for many years." Maya stared at the envelope. "She came here herself?" she asked. "Yes," Sister Mary said. "She brought you here herself. She was very ill. She did not want to leave you. But she had no choice." Maya held the envelope in both hands. It felt heavier than paper had any right to feel. "Is she still alive?" she asked, even though she already knew the answer somewhere deep in her chest. Sister Mary was quiet for a moment. Then she said, No, my daughter. She is not. Maya sat with that for a long time. Then she put the envelope carefully into her bag, thanked Sister Mary, and walked back to her room. She did not open it that night. She was not ready. She did not open it on the plane either, though she took it out twice and held it in her lap and put it back. She told herself she would open it when she arrived, when she was settled, when she was ready. What she did not know was that by the time she finally opened that envelope, everything around her would have already changed. On the same morning that Maya was boarding a flight from Lagos to Atlanta for the first time in her life, a young woman named Chloe Coker was standing in front of a mirror in a 4-bedroom house in a quiet Atlanta suburb, deciding which earrings to wear. She was 20 years old. She was beautiful, though she sometimes looked at her own reflection with a slight frown, as if trying to recognize something in it that kept escaping her. She had her mother's mannerisms and her father's calm. She had grown up in that house, gone to good schools, taken piano lessons and then quit, tried painting and then quit, and eventually settled on studying communications at a private university 20 minutes from home. She had a best friend named Tiffany who talked too fast and laughed too loudly, and was the most loyal person Chloe had ever known. She had a boyfriend who had broken her heart 6 months earlier, and whom she was still not entirely over. She had 2 parents who loved her visibly and loudly. Her father, Mr. Khalad Coker, who called her his sunshine, and her mother, Mrs. Felicia Coker, who planned her daughter's life with the careful precision of someone who had been afraid of losing something precious for a very long time. Chloe's life, from the outside, looked complete. But there was something she had carried since childhood that she could never fully explain to anyone, not even to Tiffany. It was a feeling. The best way she could describe it was this, like a sentence that stops in the middle, like a song that ends before the last note resolves, like standing in a room full of people and being completely, absolutely certain that someone who was supposed to be there was missing. She had mentioned it to her mother once, when she was about 13. Mrs. Coker had gone very still. Then she had smiled, a smile that did not reach her eyes, and said, "You are a sensitive child. Some people just feel things more deeply than others." Chloe had accepted that answer because she was 13 and had no other framework for it. But the feeling never left. She noticed, sometimes, that there were very few photographs of her from before the age of 2. Her mother said the camera they had back then was unreliable, that many pictures were lost. Chloe had always found it strange. Her mother was the kind of woman who documented everything. There were hundreds of photographs from age 2 onwards. But from before that, almost nothing. She had stopped asking about it because asking made her mother uncomfortable in a way that made Chloe feel guilty for asking. So she carried the feeling quietly, like something she had agreed, without words, to never name. She had no idea that the answer to every question she had never been allowed to ask was, at that exact moment, sitting in seat 31C on a flight from Lagos to Atlanta. Maya landed at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport on a Thursday morning in August. She remembered the cold first. The air conditioning inside the terminal hit her the moment she walked through the jet bridge, and she stopped for a second, startled. The girl behind her bumped into her back and apologized quickly without looking at her. Maya kept moving. Everything was loud and fast and enormous. The terminal seemed to go on forever. Signs everywhere. People pulling bags in every direction. Voices and accents she had only ever heard on television. She gripped the strap of her bag with both hands and followed the signs to baggage claim, repeating the instructions. Sister Mary had written out for her on a folded piece of paper. Collect your bag. Find the university shuttle. Show them your ID. Simple. She could do simple things. The university had arranged accommodation for scholarship students. Her room was on the 4th floor of a dormitory on the east side of campus, small and clean, with a window that looked out onto a courtyard where 3 large oak trees stood. Her roommate was a girl from Ghana named Abina, who was studying engineering. Abina was kind. She could tell Maya was overwhelmed, and she did not crowd her. She showed her where the bathrooms were, told her the dining hall closed at 9, and left her alone. Maya sat on the edge of her bed and took out the envelope and held it. Then she put it back. Not yet. The next morning she went to campus orientation. Then she found the library. Then she found the medical faculty building and stood outside it for a full minute before walking in. On her 3rd day in Atlanta, Maya was walking across the central quad on her way to collect her course registration form when a girl coming from the opposite direction suddenly stopped and stared at her with an expression she did not understand. Then another student turned. Then another. Someone said, "Chloe? Chloe, what are you wearing? Where are you going?" Maya stopped and looked around. There was no one near her. "Me?" she said. The girl who had spoken took a step back and squinted at her. "You're not Chloe." "No," Maya said. "My name is Maya. I just arrived from Nigeria." The girl stared at her for another long moment. Then she looked at the boy beside her. Then back at Maya. "You look exactly like someone I know," she said slowly. "Like, exactly." Maya did not know what to say. So she said nothing. She nodded politely and kept walking. But before she had taken 10 steps, she heard the girl say to the boy beside her, in a low voice she perhaps did not realize Maya could still hear, "I'm sending this to Chloe." Across campus, Chloe was sitting in a lecture hall when her phone buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again. Then a fourth time. She turned it face up under her desk and saw Tiffany's name on the screen, 4 messages in a row. Chloe. Look at this right now. I am not joking, call me. Attached to the last message was a video. Chloe waited until the lecturer turned to write on the board. Then she pressed play, holding the phone close to her face. The video was shaky, clearly filmed quickly on someone's phone. It showed a girl walking across what looked like the central quad. The girl was wearing a simple white shirt and dark trousers, and had her hair pulled back. She was carrying a folder and walking with her head slightly down, the way someone walks when they are new somewhere and still learning the geography of a place in their mind. Chloe watched the video. Then she watched it again. Then she sat completely still for a long moment and quietly picked up her bag, stood up from her seat, and walked out of the lecture hall without a word to anyone. Outside she called Tiffany. "Where did you get this?" "Kezia sent it to me," Tiffany said. "She ran into her on the quad this morning." "Chloe, who is that?" "I don't know," Chloe said. "She looks exactly." "I know," Chloe said. "Like, exactly. Not just similar. Exactly." Chloe stood in the corridor with her back against the wall, and the phone pressed hard against her ear. "She said her name was Maya," Tiffany continued. "She said she just arrived from Nigeria." The corridor was busy with students passing between classes. Chloe watched them move without really seeing them. "Find out what faculty she's in," Chloe said. "Please, Tiffany. Just find out." Chloe found Maya in the library the next morning. Maya was at a table near the window on the second floor, her course outline spread in front of her, a pen behind her ear, trying to map out the semester in her head. She did not hear Chloe approach. She only looked up because the chair across from her scraped back and someone sat down. Maya looked up, and the world went very quiet. Chloe was looking at her the same way Maya was looking at Chloe, with an expression that was not quite shock and not quite recognition, but something between the two that did not have a name. Neither of them spoke for what felt like a very long time. Then Maya said, "You look like me." And Chloe said, "You look like me." They stayed in that library for 4 hours. They compared everything. Their birthdays, same day, same year, same month. The small scar behind their left ears is identical, in the same position, and in the same shape. The way they both tapped their fingers on the table when they were thinking. The way they both tilted their heads slightly to the left when they were listening closely to someone. The fact that they both had a habit of underlining things in books in straight, careful lines. Chloe kept shaking her head slowly, not in denial but in something closer to disbelief at her own certainty. Because she was certain. The feeling she had carried her whole life, that incomplete sentence, that unresolved note, was resolving itself right in front of her in real time, and she did not know whether to cry or laugh or be angry. Then Maya remembered the envelope. She did not know what made her think of it in that exact moment. Perhaps it was the weight of what she was feeling, the sense that something enormous was shifting, that the ground underneath her understanding of her own life was moving. Whatever it was, her hand went to her bag, and she took out the envelope before she had fully decided to. She looked at it. Then she looked at Chloe. "A woman at the orphanage where I grew up," Maya said slowly, "gave me this before I left Lagos. She said my mother left it for me." Chloe's eyes dropped to the envelope. "Have you opened it?" "No," Maya said. Chloe looked at her. "Open it," she said quietly. "Please." Maya's hands were not entirely steady as she broke the seal. Inside was a single folded page. The paper was thin, the kind that comes in cheap writing pads. The handwriting was neat but slightly uneven, as if the person writing had been sitting up in bed or working through pain. Maya read it aloud. Her voice was steady. "No one in that library knew how. My daughters, if you are reading this, then Sister Mary kept her promise, and you have grown into a young woman. I am so proud of you, Maya. I hope you have been strong. I hope you have been well. I hope you have not been too lonely. There is something you must know. When you were born, you were not alone. You came into this world with a sister. A twin. Her name is Chloe. She was born 5 minutes after you, and she was perfect. I could not keep you both. I was sick, and I was alone, and I had nothing. A woman named Felicia Coker offered to take Chloe to America and give her a good life. She promised me Chloe would be told the truth when she was old enough. She promised me. I held Chloe for the last time on a Tuesday morning, and I told her I loved her even though she was too small to understand. Then I let her go. I kept you, Maya, and then I lost you too. Not because I did not love you, because I loved you too much to watch you suffer with me. I am sorry. For everything. For not being stronger. For not finding another way. If you ever find your sister, and I pray that you do, please tell her that I named her Chloe because the moment I held her I felt something so pure and so bright that no other name would do. Tell her I loved her from the very first breath. All my love always. Your mother, Eliana. By the time Maya finished reading, Chloe was crying. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just tears moving steadily down her face, one after another, the way rain comes when the sky has been heavy for a very long time and finally cannot hold any more. Maya folded the letter carefully and held it in her lap. She named you Chloe, Maya said. She loved you from the very first breath. Maya said, before anyone else named you anything. Before anyone else held you. Chloe looked at Maya across the table. Her voice when it came was barely above a whisper. She kept her promise. She told you. Yes, Maya said. But your mother, she stopped and corrected herself, Mrs. Coker. She didn't. No, Maya said. She didn't. They sat with that truth between them for a long time. Outside the library window the campus moved on normally. Students crossing the quad. A bus pulling up to the stop. 2 boys throwing a frisbee under the oak trees. The world was completely unaware that in a library on the 2nd floor, 2 girls who had been half a person each for 20 years had just quietly become whole. Chloe drove home that evening in silence. Tiffany had texted 4 times. She ignored all of them. She needed to think. She needed to be very calm before she walked through that door, because she knew that if she were not calm, she would say things in a way that could not be taken back, and she needed, the truth first. The full truth. Not a version of it. Not a carefully managed partial truth delivered by a woman who had had 20 years to prepare for this moment. She found her mother in the kitchen, standing at the stove, stirring something. Mrs. Coker turned when she heard the door. She smiled. You're early, she said. I met someone today, Chloe said. Something in her mother's face shifted. Just slightly. Just for a moment. But Chloe had been watching this face her entire life, and she caught it. Oh. On campus, Chloe continued. A girl from Nigeria. On scholarship. Mrs. Coker turned back to the stove. Her hand kept moving the spoon. That's nice, she said. She looks exactly like me, Mom. The spoon stopped. Exactly like me. Same face. Same eyes. Same scar behind the left ear. Mrs. Coker set the spoon down carefully on the rest beside the stove. She did not turn around. Chloe, her name is Maya, Chloe said. Her mother's name was Eliana. She grew up in an orphanage in Lagos. Chloe's voice was steady. She had promised herself steady. She had a letter. Her mother left her a letter. The kitchen was very quiet. Her mother's name was Eliana, Chloe said again. And in the letter, she mentioned a woman named Felicia Coker. Mrs. Coker turned around slowly. Her eyes were already wet. Chloe, I need you to listen to me. Is it true? Please let me explain, Mom. Chloe's voice cracked on the word, just slightly. Is it true? The silence that followed was the loudest thing Chloe had ever heard in her life. Then slowly, her mother closed her eyes and nodded. Chloe felt something move through her that was not quite anger and not quite grief, but something that contained both of them and went further than either. I was desperate, her mother began. After the 3rd miscarriage I know, Chloe said quietly. I understand that part. What I don't understand is this. She placed her phone on the counter, the video of Maya on the screen. She grew up in an orphanage, Mom. Alone. No family. No one. While I was here. While you were giving me everything. I loved you. I know you love me, Chloe said. That is not what I'm questioning. She picked up her phone. You promised her mother. You swore to her. And she died believing you would keep that promise. And you didn't. Mrs. Coker was crying openly now. I was afraid. I thought if you knew you would. Would what? Chloe's voice was not loud. It was worse than loud. It was precise. Choose her? Leave? Love you less? She shook her head slowly. I would never have left you. You were my mother. You are my mother. That was never in danger. She picked up her bag from the counter. But she, Chloe said, looking at the phone one more time before sliding it into her pocket, had nobody. For 20 years she had nobody. And you could have fixed that. She walked out of the kitchen. The weeks that followed were not easy. Maya and Chloe did not become instant sisters the way it happens in films, where 2 people discover each other and everything falls seamlessly into place. Real life does not work that way. They were strangers who happened to share a face and a bloodline and a dead mother and 20 years of completely different experience. They had different ways of speaking, different ways of thinking, different fears, different habits, different wounds. Chloe was used to being loved without condition. Maya was used to earning everything. Chloe expressed emotion loudly and quickly. Maya had learned to hold things still inside her until she was alone. Chloe found Maya's quietness difficult. Maya found Chloe's directness startling. They misunderstood each other regularly. They said the wrong things and had to say sorry and say them again better. But they kept showing up. Chloe started coming to the library to study near Maya. Not with her necessarily, just near. Close enough that Maya could see her if she looked up. Chloe said she was not sure why she did it. Maya thought she knew, because the feeling Chloe had carried her whole life, that missing presence, was lessened when Maya was nearby. Maya felt something similar that she could not have named before, but could recognize now. Chloe brought Maya food from home sometimes. Her mother's cooking. She would set it on the table without much comment, open her laptop, and say nothing about it. The first time Maya tasted it, she had to look away because she did not want Chloe to see her face. She had never had someone bring her food before. Not like that. Not just because. Maya told Chloe about the orphanage slowly, in pieces, over many evenings. Chloe listened with the kind of attention that feels like a form of respect. She never pitied Maya, or if she felt pity, she had the grace not to show it. She just listened. Chloe told Maya about her life too. The beautiful house, the good schools, the mother she loved and was furious at simultaneously, and the hollow feeling she had carried so long she had stopped questioning it. I always felt like a sentence that stopped in the middle, Chloe told Maya one evening. Maya looked at her. I know that feeling, Maya said. Chloe smiled. It was the first time Maya saw her smile without anything complicated behind it. It was around this time that Emeka found Maya. That is the only way to describe it. She was not looking. She did not have the space to be looking. But he found her anyway, the way some things find you, quietly, persistently, at the exact moment you are too distracted to put up resistance. He was a Nigerian graduate student, Yoruba, from Ibadan, studying public health on a fellowship. He found out Maya was from Lagos and started speaking Yoruba to her in the dining hall one evening as a joke, and when she answered back without missing a beat, he looked genuinely delighted. He was not dramatic about his feelings. He was steady. He showed up when he said he would. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He made Maya laugh, not loudly, but the real kind of laugh that surprises you from the inside. She did not tell him everything immediately, but she told him more than she had told anyone in a very long time. One evening he asked her, "What do you want?" Not what you're working toward. Not what you're proving. What do you actually want? Nobody had ever asked Maya that. She thought about it for a long time. I want to stop waiting, she said finally. I have spent my whole life waiting to be chosen, waiting to belong, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I want to stop waiting and just be somewhere, with people who are mine. He looked at her. Then be here, he said simply. You're already somewhere, and the people are already yours. You just have to let them be. Maya thought about that for a long time after. Chloe, for her part, was going through her own unraveling and rebuilding. She had not spoken properly to her mother in 3 weeks after the confrontation in the kitchen. Her father, Mr. Khalad Coker, had called her twice. She had picked up the second time. He did not defend what had been done. He said only that he was sorry, that he had known, that he had told himself over the years that it was not his secret to tell, and that he understood if she needed time. Chloe appreciated his honesty, even as she was angry at his silence. She told him she needed more than time. She needed him to understand that a real person, a living, breathing, feeling person, had grown up without a family because of a decision made in a hospital room in Lagos 20 years ago. He was quiet for a long time after that. Then he said, I know, and I am ashamed. It was not enough, but it was something. Chloe threw herself into being present with Maya in a way that was partly about sisterhood and partly about something that looked like atonement. Not for herself, because she had done nothing wrong, but for her family, for the years Maya had lost, for all the Saturday mornings by the brown wooden door. She started volunteering at an African community center, not far from campus, working with newly arrived West African immigrants who needed help navigating the city. She started asking Maya about Lagos, about the food, about the music, about the way the rain falls there in July, and how the market sounds in the early morning. She was not becoming someone else. She was becoming more fully herself. And it was something to witness. 6 months after they found each other, Chloe came to Maya with an idea. She wanted to go to Lagos. She wanted to see the orphanage. She wanted to visit their mother's grave. Maya had not been back since she left. She had not allowed herself to think too hard about going back, because thinking about it meant thinking about everything the return would contain. Sister Mary, the compound in Surulere, the hospital where they were born, the grave of a woman she had never met, but who had loved her enough to write a letter she was not sure Maya would ever read. But Maya looked at Chloe's face when she asked. She was not asking for herself alone. She was asking for both of them. So Maya said yes. They landed in Lagos on a Saturday morning. The heat met them the moment they stepped outside the terminal. That particular Lagos heat that is not just warmth but weight, the kind that wraps around you immediately and completely. Chloe stood on the pavement outside arrivals with her eyes wide and her face open, taking it in. She had never been here. This was the city where she was born, where her mother had named her Chloe before she was anything else, where her life had split into 2 paths on a Tuesday morning in a hospital ward before she was old enough to know it was happening. She breathed it in slowly. It's loud, she said. Yes, Maya said. I like it, Chloe said. They went to the orphanage first. Sister Mary was standing in the courtyard when the car pulled up, as if she had been told they were coming, though Maya had not told her about Chloe. She was older and thinner, But her posture was exactly as Maya remembered, straight and certain, the posture of a woman who has held things together through will alone for many decades. She saw Maya first. She opened her arms, and Maya walked into them without hesitation, the way you walk towards something that has always been safe. Then she looked over Maya's shoulder and saw Chloe standing behind her. Sister Mary went very still. She looked at Chloe for a long moment. Then she looked at Maya. Then back at Chloe. Then she covered her mouth with both hands, and her shoulders began to shake. Eliana, she whispered. Not their names. Their mother's name. Eliana, look. They stayed at the orphanage for hours. The children crowded around them. Two identical women who had appeared from nowhere, which was to them the most interesting thing that had happened all year. Chloe let the youngest ones touch her braids and answered their questions with a patience that made Maya watch her from across the room with something she was only just learning to call pride. Before they left, Maya asked Sister Mary to take them to their mother's grave. It was in a small cemetery not far from the compound in Suralire where Eliana had once lived. A simple headstone. Her name. The dates. Beloved mother. They stood in front of it for a long time without speaking. The afternoon was warm. Somewhere nearby a bird was calling. Chloe reached down and took Maya's hand. Maya had not expected it. They had been careful with each other, respectful of the space between them, aware that they were still learning what they were to one another, still building the grammar of this new relationship. But Chloe reached down and took Maya's hand and held it firmly. And Maya let her. Maya prayed out loud the way Sister Mary had taught her, the way she had always prayed. Honestly, without performance, just words directed upward from whatever place inside you is most true. Thank you for her, she said. Thank you for both of us. Thank you that what was lost was found. Thank you that what was taken was returned. Thank you that they are standing here. Together. Finally. Beside her, she felt Chloe's hand tighten around hers. Chloe did not know how to pray. She had not grown up that way. But she bowed her head. And in the silence that followed, she tried. They stood there together for a long time. Two girls who had been half a person each for 20 years. Two names given by the same woman on the same night in a government hospital in Lagos. Maya and Chloe. Named by a mother who loved them both before the world had a chance to separate them. Whole finally. Together finally. Home. Her name was Maya. And for the first 20 years of her life, she believed she was alone in this world. She was never alone. There was always another heartbeat somewhere, carrying the same blood, the same face, the same hunger. They just had to find their way to each other. And they did. Not cleanly. Not easily. Not without loss. But they did. And somewhere in a small cemetery in Suralire, beneath a simple headstone, a mother named Eliana, who never got to see either of her daughters grow up, finally had her answer. Both of them were found. Both of them were whole. Both of them were loved. And they were together, at last, the way she had always prayed they would be. When Maya and Chloe landed back in Atlanta after their trip to Lagos, something between them had shifted in a way that was difficult to put into words. It was not dramatic. There was no single moment they could point to and say, that was when everything changed. It was quieter than that. It was the kind of shift that happens when two people have stood together at a grave and wept and prayed and held hands and flown home side by side in the dark over the Atlantic, neither of them sleeping, both of them staring at the small screens in the seat backs in front of them without really watching anything. It was the shift that happens when you have done something hard together and come out the other side still standing, still holding on. They were not the same two people who had sat across from each other in a library 4 months earlier, two strangers with identical faces and 20 years of distance between them. There was something else now, something that did not yet have a comfortable name, but was moving steadily in the direction of one. Maya threw herself back into her studies the way she always did when she needed something solid to hold on to. Medical school was demanding in a way that left very little room for anything else. The reading alone could swallow entire days, and the practical sessions required a level of focus that she found privately to be a relief. When she was in the laboratory or sitting in a lecture hall with her notebook open and her pen moving, she was not an orphan from a Lagos orphanage navigating a foreign country and a complicated new sisterhood and a mother she had never met. She was just a student. She was just a mind working on a problem. That simplicity was its own kind of rest. But she was different now in ways she could feel even when she could not fully articulate them. She walked differently. She carried herself with something she had not quite had before, not arrogance or anything like that. More like the particular steadiness that comes when you finally know where you come from, when the ground beneath your feet has a name. Chloe was different too. The trip to Lagos had done something to her that she was still processing weeks later. She had expected to feel sad there, and she had. She had expected it to be emotional. And it was. What she had not expected was to feel, for the first time in her life, like a complete sentence. Like a song that had finally reached its last note. She had walked through the streets of Suralire and felt something in her chest loosen, that she had not known was tight. She had stood in the orphanage courtyard and watched the children and understood, viscerally and completely, the life Maya had lived, and the life that had been taken from her without her knowledge or consent. She carried that understanding home with her, and it changed the way she moved through her own life. She stopped taking things for granted in the way she previously had not even noticed she was taking them for granted. The warm house, the full refrigerator, the mother who called every day even though things between them were still raw and unresolved. Chloe answered the calls now. She was not ready to go back to what they had been. But she was no longer hanging up. The situation with Mrs. Coker was the unfinished piece. Both of them knew it. They talked about it one evening in Chloe's apartment. Chloe had moved out of the family home a month after the confrontation in the kitchen into a small place near campus that her father was paying for without complaint, sitting on the floor with takeout containers between them because Chloe had not yet bought a proper dining table. Maya said, "You are going to have to decide what you want from her. Not what she deserves. Not what is fair. What you want." Chloe was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I want her to look Maya in the eye and say sorry. Not to me. To you." Maya was quiet in return. Then she said, "That is not a small thing to ask." And Chloe said no. "It is not. But it is the only thing that feels right." Maya looked at her. She thought about Eliana. She thought about a woman who had handed her baby to a stranger in a hospital corridor because she had no other choice and extracted one promise in return. One promise. And that promise had been broken before the plane landed. She thought about what it would mean to sit across from the woman who had broken it. What it would take. What it would cost. Then she said, All right, let's do it." They arranged to meet Mrs. Coker on a Saturday afternoon at the family home. Chloe drove. Maya sat in the passenger seat and looked out the window at the Atlanta suburbs rolling past, the wide, quiet streets, the big houses set back from the road, the gardens with their careful lawns. She had treated so many patients in her mind already, on paper, in theory. She was going to spend her life sitting across from people in difficult moments, asking them hard questions, delivering hard news, holding space for things that were painful and complicated and human. She told herself that this was practice. She told herself it was not personal. She almost believed it. Mrs. Coker opened the door herself. She was dressed neatly, as she always was, but she looked tired in a way that went deeper than sleep. She looked like a woman who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time and had recently stopped pretending it was not heavy. She looked at Chloe first. Then her eyes moved to Maya. And she went very still. Because standing on her doorstep was a girl she had made choices about before that girl could speak or walk or know her own name. A girl who had grown up on the other side of the world in an orphanage, while this house stood full of warmth and food and love. A girl who looked exactly like the daughter she had raised. The resemblance, which Chloe had described to her and which she had tried to prepare herself for, was still a shock. Not because of the face. Because of the eyes. Because Maya's eyes had something in them that Chloe's had always been missing, that small permanent shadow of someone who has had to fight for everything, and seeing it there, seeing it so clearly, made something in Mrs. Coker collapse quietly behind her expression. "Come in," she said. Her voice was careful. "Come in, please." They sat in the living room. Mr. Khalad Coker was there too, at his wife's request. He was a broad-shouldered, quiet man who had aged visibly in the weeks since everything had come into the open. He greeted Maya with a handshake that lasted a moment longer than a handshake normally does, the way a person holds on when they are trying to communicate something that they do not have the right words for. He said, "It is good to meet you, Maya." And he meant it in a way that went beyond the words. She could hear that he meant it. She nodded and sat down. For a moment nobody spoke. The room was full of the particular silence that gathers when everyone in it knows that what is about to be said cannot be unsaid, and is choosing their first word carefully. Then Mrs. Coker looked at Maya, directly, without flinching, which Maya noticed and respected even in that moment. "I owe you something," Mrs. Coker said, "and I am not going to insult you by starting with an explanation." She paused. "I am going to start with this. I am sorry. I am sorry for what I did. I am sorry for what it cost you. I am sorry that you grew up without a family. I am sorry that you grew up alone. I am sorry that your mother died believing I had kept my word. And I am sorry that I let 20 years pass without finding the courage to fix what I had broken." Maya listened. She did not look away. She did not speak. She let Mrs. Coker finish. Then the room was quiet again. Maya looked down at her hands in her lap for a moment. Then she looked up. "What you did," Maya said quietly, "changed the entire shape of my life. I do not know who I would have been if I had grown up knowing about Chloe. I do not know what I would have become if someone had told me the truth earlier. But I know who I am now. And I know that some of what I am, I became because of the hardness. Because of the orphanage and the Saturday mornings and the years of having nothing but my own determination. I am not grateful for what you did. But I am not broken by it either." She paused. "What I need from you is not complicated. I need you to never lie to Chloe again. About anything. About our mother. About Lagos. About where she came from. She deserves the full truth of herself. And so did I. Mrs. Coker was crying again. Silently, steadily. She nodded. I know, she said. I know. And I will not. I promise you. Maya looked at her for a moment. Then she said, your promises have not always held. Mrs. Coker flinched. Then she said, you are right. And I understand if you do not believe this one. But I mean it. I will spend whatever time you give me proving that I mean it. The room was quiet. Then Chloe, who had been sitting beside Maya without speaking, reached over and put her hand over Maya's. It was a small gesture. It was everything. After that afternoon, things did not become simple. They became possible, which is a different thing and perhaps a more honest thing. Maya did not fold herself into the Coker family as if the past had not happened. She was not capable of that, and she did not pretend to be. But she came to dinner once. Then twice. She sat at the table where Chloe had grown up eating, where the photographs on the wall were all of Chloe from age 2 onwards and almost nothing from before, and she ate the food that Mrs. Coker cooked, and she answered the questions that Mr. Claude Coker asked about her studies with the careful politeness of someone still learning where the edges of a new thing are. It was awkward sometimes. It was tender sometimes. It was both things at once more often than not. Chloe watched all of it with the focused attention of someone who understood that what she was witnessing was fragile and important and should not be rushed. She did not push. She did not stage manage. She just made sure both people always had a reason to come back to the table. That was her gift, Maya was learning. Chloe's particular genius was making people feel that there was room for them, that they were wanted. Maya, who had spent 20 years in a world that had not reliably made her feel wanted, found herself slowly, carefully, beginning to believe it. Emeka, through all of this, was a constant. He never tried to be more than what the moment needed. When Maya needed to talk, he listened. When she needed silence, he sat beside her in it. When she needed to laugh, and she needed to laugh more than people who had not known her before might have expected, because Maya had a dry, quick sense of humor that surprised everyone who encountered it for the first time. He made her laugh without effort. He had met Chloe by now, and the two of them had the comfortable, slightly competitive rapport of two people who both cared very much about the same person, and were each quietly assessing whether the other was worthy. Chloe had told Maya, after their third meeting, that she approved. Maya had told her she did not require approval. Chloe had said, I know. I'm giving it anyway. Maya had tried not to smile and failed. These were the small, ordinary moments that she was learning to hold. These were the moments she had grown up without. A sister who gave unsolicited opinions. A person who showed up with food and then argued about how to reheat it. A man who remembered that she did not like ice in her water and ordered accordingly without being reminded. These small things. These unremarkable, irreplaceable small things. Her first year of medical school ended with Maya in the top 5% of her class. The letter from the dean of the faculty was formal and brief, the kind of letter that does not waste words. But Sister Mary's response when Maya sent her a photograph of it was not brief at all. It was 3 pages long, handwritten, with 2 exclamation marks on every other line which Sister Mary never used it for anything, which meant that for Sister Mary, this was essentially weeping. Maya read it sitting on the floor of her dorm room and laughed until she had to put the letter down. Then she picked it up and read it again. Then she did something she had not done in a long time. She sat quietly and talked to her mother. Not out loud. Just inside herself, in the direction of wherever Eliana was. She said, I am doing well. I am becoming a doctor. I found her. We found each other. I think you can rest now. She sat with that for a while. The room was quiet. Outside the window, Atlanta went about its Saturday afternoon business. And Maya felt, not for the first time but more clearly than before, that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Chloe's journey that year was a different kind of becoming. She had started her communications degree before any of this happened, before Maya existed in her world, back when the hollow feeling was just a background noise she had learned to live with. Now the degree felt different. She was writing differently, with more weight, more specificity, more willingness to go to the uncomfortable places in a story and stay there until the story was told properly. Her professors noticed. One of them pulled her aside after she submitted a piece about identity and belonging in diaspora that had started as a class assignment and turned into something considerably more personal than the brief required. Your writing has changed, the professor said. What happened to you? Chloe thought about how to answer that. Then she said, I found out where I come from. The professor looked at her for a moment. Then she said, keep writing from there. Don't stop. Chloe did not stop. She started a column in the university's student publication, a monthly essay about the African diaspora experience, about identity, about what it means to grow up between worlds and belong fully to neither and have to build your own sense of home from the pieces available. The column developed a following that surprised her. Students she had never met stopped her on campus to tell her that something she had written had described exactly what they were feeling, and they had not known how to say it before reading her words. This was not what she had expected from a communications degree. It was better. She had found, through Maya, not just a sister but a subject. Not just a story but a purpose. It was Chloe who first raised the idea. They were sitting in a coffee shop near campus on a Tuesday afternoon in early spring, both of them supposedly studying, both of them not really studying, when Chloe closed her laptop and looked at Maya and said, "I want to tell our story." Maya looked up from her textbook. "What do you mean?" I want to write it," Chloe said. "Properly. Not for the column. Not for a class. I want to write the whole thing. From the beginning. From Eliana. From the hospital in Lagos. From the orphanage. From the video on the quad. From the library. From all of it." She paused. "I think people need to hear it." Maya was quiet for a long time. She looked at her coffee. Then she looked at Chloe. "You want to write about us?" "Yes," Chloe said. "About us. About Mom. About what was done and what it cost and what we built out of it anyway." She leaned forward slightly. "Maya, there are other people out there carrying what we carried. The missing feeling. The incomplete sentence. The story that nobody told them. What if reading ours gave them something? What if it helped someone find their way back to something they lost?" Maya considered this for a long time. She thought about the orphanage. She thought about the Saturday mornings. She thought about what it might have meant to her at 7 years old, or 12, or 15, to read a story about someone who had been where she was and found their way through. She thought about Eliana writing a letter she was not sure would ever be read, writing it anyway, because some things need to be said even when you cannot be certain they will be heard. Then Maya said, "Write it. Write all of it. Don't leave anything out." Chloe looked at her. "Are you sure?" Maya said she left us a letter. The least we can do is make sure it meant something. But before any of that could happen, there was one more thing that needed to be done. One more piece that had been sitting unfinished since the beginning. And it was Maya who brought it up, on an evening in late spring when she and Chloe were sitting on the small balcony of Chloe's apartment watching the Atlanta skyline go from gold to orange to purple as the sun went down. They had been talking about Eliana. They talked about her often now, filling in the shape of her from the letter and from what Sister Mary had told Maya over the years, and from the neighbor Mama Beezy, who was still alive and still living in Suralere, and whom Maya had tracked down after the Lagos trip with some help from a cousin of Abina's who knew the area. Mama Beezy had spoken to Maya on the phone for 2 hours and had cried for most of it, and had told her things about Eliana that Maya had written down in a notebook she kept specifically for this. What Eliana laughed at, what music she liked, the way she wore her hair, the fact that she used to sing to herself while she cooked even when she had almost nothing to cook with. Maya had read all of it to Chloe. They had built a person out of these pieces. A real person. A mother. And it was on this evening, watching the sky change colors over Atlanta, that Maya said she never had a proper memorial. Chloe looked at her. "What do you mean?" She died alone and poor and was buried quickly, and nobody who loved her was there," Maya said. "The only people at her grave are us. And I think she deserves more than that. She deserves to be remembered properly. By people who knew her. By people who loved her. By her daughters." Chloe was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "So we do it. We give her the memorial she never had." Maya nodded. "In Lagos," she said. "Where she lived. Where she was. At the end of the summer." Chloe said, "I'll be there." Maya looked at her. "I know," she said. "I know you will." They went back to Lagos at the end of August. This time they brought people with them. Emeka came. He had asked Maya, not asked permission, just asked, "Can I come?" And the simplicity of it had moved her more than she expected. Tiffany came, because Chloe had not gone anywhere important in her life without Tiffany, and she was not about to start now. Mr. Khalad Coker came. He had asked Chloe if he was welcome, and she had said yes, because whatever his failures had been, his grief was real and his love for both of them was real, and he deserved the chance to pay his respects to the woman whose children he had, in very different ways, been part of raising. Mrs. Felicia Coker asked if she could come. There was a long pause on the phone when she asked. Then Maya, who Chloe had passed the phone to, said yes. Because Eliana had asked Mrs. Coker to give her daughter a good life. And she had done that. She had done that part. The wrong and the right of it could both be true at the same time. Maya was learning to hold things that were both true at the same time. She was finding one of the more important skills a person could develop. Sister Mary came from Lagos. She was there when they arrived, standing outside the guest house they had rented in Suralere, looking smaller than Maya remembered and fiercer than Maya remembered, which was a combination that made Maya walk quickly and hug her before she had decided to. Mama Beezy came too, older now, moving slowly, but present and upright, and wearing her best clothes because she said, this was a good day, and good days required your best. She had known Eliana. She had held both babies on the day they were born, briefly, while the nurse attended to something. She had watched Eliana walk out of that room with only one of them and had not known, until now, that the other one had survived and grown and become this. These two women standing side by side with their identical faces, and their 20 years of different lives written in the way they each stood, in the way they each smiled, in everything. Mama Beezy looked at them for a long time. Then she said in Yoruba, Eliana would be so proud. And then she switched to English so Chloe could understand, and said it again. Eliana would be so proud. They held the memorial at the cemetery in the late afternoon, when the light was low and golden, and the city had slowed slightly in the way Lagos slows in the early evening. Not completely, never completely, but enough. Someone had brought flowers, Tiffany, who had taken it upon herself to organize this without being asked, and had done it beautifully, as Tiffany did most things. The headstone looked different with flowers around it, less final, more like a place someone might come back to. They stood in a loose circle around it, all of them, this unlikely group assembled across oceans and decades, and a single decision made in a hospital room 20 years ago. Sister Mary said a prayer in a voice that was quiet and certain, and went directly upward without detour. Mama Beezy sang something, a short song, old, in a dialect Maya did not fully know but felt in her chest anyway. Mr. Kalad Coker stood with his hands folded and his head bowed, and did not speak but was fully present, which was what was needed from him. Mrs. Felicia Coker placed her hand briefly on the headstone. She did not speak either. What passed between her and Eliana in that moment was private, and Maya did not try to read it. Emeka stood beside Maya, and did not touch her, but was close enough that she could feel his warmth, which was enough. Tiffany held Chloe's hand and cried openly, which was absolutely Tiffany, and which made Chloe smile through her own tears in a way that was also absolutely Chloe. Then Maya and Chloe spoke. They had not planned what they would say. They had talked about whether to write something down and decided against it, because Eliana had written her most important words on a piece of thin paper in uncertain handwriting, and they had been enough. Maya spoke first. She said, "My mother." It was the first time she had said those two words out loud in reference to Eliana. She felt them land somewhere inside her with a weight that was not painful, exactly, but significant. Like setting something down that you had been carrying for a long time. "My mother," she said again. "I never met you. I grew up not knowing your name. I grew up not knowing that the reason I felt incomplete was because half of me was on the other side of the world. But I know you now. Sister Mary told me who you were. Mama Beezy told me who you were. And you told me yourself, in a letter that you wrote when you were sick and afraid and alone, that you wrote anyway because you wanted me to know. You wanted me to know that I was loved before the world had a chance to tell me otherwise. I know that now. I believe that now. And I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure I was worth the faith you put in me." She paused. "We found each other," she said. "Your daughters. We found each other. And we are going to be okay. Both of us. I promise you that." Then Chloe spoke. Her voice was less steady than Maya's, but she did not apologize for that. She said, "I grew up not knowing you existed. I grew up not knowing that there was a name you gave me before any other name, that there was a moment in a hospital room where you held me and loved me before you let me go. I know now. And I need you to know that I do not hold what you chose against you. You were young and sick and alone, and you did what you could with what you had. The same way Maya did. The same way we both do." She looked down at the headstone for a moment. "I am going to tell our story," she said quietly. "I am going to write it down so that people who were not here can know it, so that you are not forgotten, so that the choice you made and what it cost you and what it built in both of us are part of the record of things that happened in this world." She pressed her fingers briefly to the headstone. "Rest," she said. "We have each other now. You can rest." The evening came in gently around them. Lagos at dusk has a particular quality of light, amber and warm and slightly hazy, the kind of light that makes everything look the way it does in a memory of a good day. They stayed at the graveside for a while after the formal words were done, talking softly among themselves, the kind of easy talking that happens when something difficult has been completed properly, and the difficulty has left behind it a particular quiet that is not emptiness but its opposite. Sister Mary and Mama Beezy sat on the low wall at the edge of the cemetery and talked to each other the way very old friends talk, comfortably and without rush. Emeka and Tiffany had somehow ended up in a conversation about food that had become surprisingly heated, and that Chloe kept interjecting into from 3 feet away. Mr. Kalad Coker stood with Maya for a few minutes and said very little, but said what he said carefully, and it was sufficient. Mrs. Felicia Coker sat alone for a while. Then Maya walked over and sat beside her, not because it was easy, because it was the right thing. They did not speak much, but they sat there together in the fading light, and that was its own kind of language. When it was time to leave, they walked out of the cemetery together, all of them, into the warm Lagos evening. The street outside was alive the way Lagos streets always are, motorcycles weaving between cars, a woman selling groundnuts from a basket balanced on her head, music drifting from somewhere down the road, and children running on the pavement. Chloe walked out and stopped for a moment, and just stood there taking it in with that look she got in Lagos, the wide-open look, the I-like-it look. Maya stopped beside her. They stood there together for a moment without speaking, two women in a Lagos street at dusk, the city moving around them with all its noise and heat and color and life. Then Chloe turned to Maya and said, "So, what happens next?" Maya considered this. She thought about the medical degree. She thought about the column Chloe was writing, and the story she was going to tell. She thought about Emeka and Sister Mary and Mama Beezy, and a family assembled from pieces that had been scattered across 2 continents for 20 years, and were only now finding their way to the same table. She thought about a woman named Eliana who had written a letter she was not sure would ever be read, and whose daughters were standing in her city on a warm evening in August, whole and alive and together. Then Maya said, "We go home." Chloe raised an eyebrow. "Which home?" And Maya, who had spent 20 years without an answer to that question, looked at her sister and said nothing, to both of them. "Both of them are ours." Chloe looked at her for a moment. Then she smiled. Then she looped her arm through Maya's the way sisters do, the way they had not done before because they were still learning how, and she said, "Let's go then." And they walked down the street together into the Lagos evening, into the noise and the warmth and the life of a city that had given them to the world on the same night and was welcoming them back now, together, for the first time. Some stories begin with loss. Some begin with a lie. Some begin in a hospital room at night with a desperate woman and a decision that cannot be taken back. This one began in all 3 places at once. But it did not end there. It ended here, on a street in Lagos, with 2 women walking arm in arm into the evening. It ended with a letter that was written, and a promise that was kept in a grave with flowers on it, and a name on a headstone that 2 daughters now knew by heart. It ended with a family built not from the circumstances of birth, but from the choice to show up, again and again, for someone who shares your blood and your face and the particular shape of your hunger. It ended the way the best stories end, not with everything fixed, not with every wound healed, not with all the lost years returned, but with something true, something whole, something that could not be taken back. 2 sisters. 1 story. Finally told. If this story moved you, and I believe it did, please share it right now. Not tomorrow. Right now. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Post it on your status. Because somewhere out there is a person who is sitting exactly where Maya sat for 20 years, by a door waiting, wondering if anyone is ever going to come. And this story might be the thing that reminds them to hold on. I sincerely thank you for watching, and I will see you at our next story. Stay safe.